I think we told like that the other day. Can we have those?
I mean, we could have them.
Everybody outside texts me like we've just gone on and
I know.
yeah, because they're messing with
We'll just leave it on internal for now. Okay, use it later.
anything. What is it? The judge is not giving us an answer.
Okay. Get over her about it.
He doesn't, he keeps looking over there and like not giving them an answer.
Okay.
Test, test. about an hour ago. mostly static. Can we get one more minute so I can talk to her just for a second? How about now?
Wait, that's way better.
The static is gone.
Yeah.
Okay. Be real bad. Okay. All right. Can you hear me through this? You can hear me here. Something is mixed up here. So the static you're hearing is a video teleconferencing device. So I have. Is it unbearable?
No, now it's way lower.
Well,
Yeah.
if I put it back in, it's. Okay. So let me try this.
I don't have static right now.
Okay.
A little higher, but it's not bad.
Okay. Okay. You better say. Okay.
Wait, we're talking there for me?
Check.
I just got a lot of static.
You raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about giving before the court in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Tell us your name, please, sir.
Sure, my name is Jason Shadow,
Spell your first and last name for the court, please.
JASONSHOUDEL.
And Mr. Still, how are you employed?
Currently, I'm employed as a special agent with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, 13 Perry office.
And how long have you been employed with the GBI?
I've been employed as a GBI agent since September of 2007. Prior to that, I was a deputy sheriff with the Thomas County Sheriff's Office from around July of 1999 until 2007 when I got on with GBI.
Now, Agent Still, I'm going to direct your attention to the investigation regarding Tara Grinstead. Did you and your agency participate in the investigation of the missing person as well as the subsequent death of Tara Grinstead?
We did.
Specifically, I want to direct your attention to June the 16th of 2016. Did you interview this defendant, Bo Dukes?
I did.
The person known as Bo Dukes, is he in the courtroom?
He is, sir.
Can you tell me what he's wearing, please?
Dark-colored suit with a red tie sitting at the defense table next to his attorney, John Fox.
Now, on June the 16th of 2016, when you interviewed this defendant, where did this interview take place?
We were in a small side office at the Rochelle Police Department,
In the Rochelle Police Department located in what county?
Wilcox County.
Now, with regard to that interview, how was it that you arranged to meet Mr. Dukes on this occasion at the Rochelle Police Department?
I can't recall exactly. I do know that I either got in touch with his mother or through Bo himself directly via telephone and asked him to come down to, I think it was Bo himself on the phone I ended up talking to on the phone the day before and asked him to come down to the police department. He mentioned that he was working or had some other conflict and the only time he had available was earlier in that morning, so we scheduled it for that morning a little after 7 and we started the interview around 7:23 that morning.
Now, when you got to the Rochelle Police Department with this defendant, Dukes, was he under arrest at that time?
He was not.
Did you promise him anything to get him to speak with you?
No, I did not.
Did you promise him any hope or benefit to speak with you?
No, I did not.
Did you, in your course of law enforcement experience, have you seen people under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or other narcotics?
I have.
Did Mr. Dukes appear on June 16, 2016 to be under the influence of any drugs, alcohol, or other narcotics?
Not that I could tell, no, sir.
Now, with regard to that June 16, 2016 interview, did you advise of his Miranda rights on that occasion?
I did not.
And why did you not do that on that occasion?
He was merely just coming in to do an interview. It was an informative type interview. It wasn't an interrogation. It wasn't in custody. situation. He was free to leave, free to go at any point in time, so I didn't feel like at that point it would apply to that interview.
After the interview that you conducted with Mr. Dukes on June 16th of 2016, was he placed under arrest after that interview?
No, he left.
Okay. And how did he leave?
I stayed inside the office there where we did the interview for a few minutes. I think I walked him to the door. He left on his own. I'm not even sure what vehicle he left in, but he did leave on his own. Yes, sir.
Now I'm going to direct your attention, Agent Chevelle, to another time on February the 19th of 2017, that being a Sunday.
Yes, sir.
Did you have a second opportunity to speak with this defendant, David?
I did.
Where did this interview take place?
What was that date?
February the 19th.
2017.
Okay.
Did you have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Dukes again on that day?
I did.
Was he under arrest at that time?
No, he was not.
Was anyone there with Mr. Dukes on that day?
Yes, his attorney, Mr. John Fox, was there with him. Yourself, Paul Bowden, and Kim Schwalls, who was employed with Paul Bowden's office, and myself.
Okay. Following that interview, during that interview, did you promise him any hope of benefit to get him to speak with you?
I did not.
Did you notice him to be under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or narcotics on that Sunday, February the 19th of 2017?
He didn't appear to be, no, sir.
Now, after speaking with him on February 19th of 2017, was he placed under arrest at that time?
He was not.
Now, I want to direct your attention to the following Tuesday, that is February the 21st of 2017. Did you have a third chance to speak with Mr. Dukes on that day?
I did.
And on that day, did you advise him of his Miranda rights?
I did.
And how was it that you advised him of his Miranda rights?
Before he got there, I had filled out just the top portion, date, location, but he was sitting at a table, kind of catty corner for me. We read through the Miranda rights together. I asked him, I checked his education level. Could he understand, read, write, understand English language? He agreed he could. He said he'd had a little bit of college. He graduated high school. Usually my languages is based on their education level. I'll usually ask them, I'll say, well, based on the level you got to in school, I'm going to assume you can read, write, and understand English language. He acknowledged. I asked him if he was under the influence of any alcohol or drugs. He denied. We went through the Miranda form together. I usually have the person read the number one right on there, which is I have the right to remain silent, which he did, just acknowledging the fact that he could read. I read through the remainder of the rights. Mr. Fox was there. I asked him if he had any questions and understood his rights. He said he did. He was willing to talk to me. He signed the Miranda form, and he initialed next to each number of the rights that were read out loud. I signed the Miranda form, and Agent Madison Holland was with me at the time that we did the interview, and he signed it as a witness as well.
During the course of the interview, did you or in your presence, Madison Holland, threaten or coerce him in any way to get him to speak?
Did not.
Did either one of you promise him any hope of benefit to get him to speak with you on that occasion?
We did not.
In fact, his attorney was there with him when he spoke with you on this occasion. Is that right?
He was.
I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit number 1 and ask you to look at that, please, sir.
Sure.
Are you familiar with State's Exhibit number 1?
Yes, sir, I am.
What is State's Exhibit number 1?
State's Exhibit number 1 is a copy of the Miranda rights form, which I filled out and read to Mr. Dukes, which he also read and initialed and signed along with Agent Holland. This is State's Exhibit number 1.
Now, State's Exhibit number 1, a true and accurate copy of the original Miranda form that you filled out with Mr. Dukes on February 21st of 2017.
Yes, sir, it is.
All right, this time I will tender State's Exhibit number 1.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, just admitted.
Now, Agent Chevelle, showing you here at the top of this form, there's some handwriting at the top of this form. Whose handwriting is that?
That's mine.
With regard to these, there are initials out beside each of those rights. Whose initials are those?
Bo Dukes.
And did he initial those in your presence?
Yes.
Now, there's a signature down at the bottom of that form. Whose signature is that?
Bo Dukes.
And under Mr. Duke's signature, whose signature is that?
Mine.
Did Mr. Duke sign this in your presence?
He did.
And with regard to the third signature on the form, whose signature is that?
Agent Madison Holland.
All right. And did he also sign there with regard to witnessing the interview in the Miranda rights form?
Correct.
At this time, Agent Chevelle, beginning with the top of the form, if you will, just begin by reading the date. If you will, read that form, of course, with the record.
Yes, sir. Waiver of rights, date 2-21/2017, time 9 a.m., place GBI office, Perry. My name is Bo Dukes, period. I'm 32 years old, period. My address is 277 Wood Road, period. I've completed the 12th grade in school, period. I know that Jason Shadell, Madison Holland, is special agent with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. He told me that. Number one, I have the right to remain silent. Number two, anything I say can be used against me in a court of law. Number three, I have the right to talk to a lawyer and have him present with me while I'm being questioned. Number four, if I cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent me before any questioning if I wish. And number five, I can decide at any time to exercise these rights and not answer any questions or make any statement. I understand my rights, period. Having these rights in mind, I'm now willing to talk to a law enforcement officer, period. I've not been threatened, period. I've not been promised anything, period. I've not been forced in any way to answer any questions or make any statements, period. And then the signatures.
Did Mr. Dukes sign acknowledging that?
Yes, sir. And then I had him place his initials next to each number, acknowledging that those were the rights that were read to him.
Now, did Mr. Dukes or his attorney have any questions about those rights?
No, sir.
Did they ever ask you about any of those rights?
No, sir.
And after reading them those rights, did Mr. Dukes agree to speak with you on February 21st, 2017?
Yes, sir, he did.
With regard to the waiver of rights, of course, as well as the statement, those were recorded with recording devices. Is that right?
They were.
Judge, I don't have any further.
That's fine.
Good afternoon, Jason.
Hey, John.
Doing all right today?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just a couple of brief questions. Jason, if I ask you anything which is unclear, don't understand, just let me know so I can clean it up.
Yes, sir.
All right. You had told the court that Mr. Dukes met with you about 9 o'clock in the morning, February 21, 2017, at the GBI field office, Region
Yes, sir.
13.
Yes, sir.
All right. And that meeting had been set up Sunday, February 1927, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And at that meeting, February 1927, you listed some individuals there. You were there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Dukes was there.
Well, let me clarify. The meeting, there was two meetings at our office that day. The first meeting where I was discussing where Mr. Dukes, yourself, District Attorney Paul Bowden, Kim Schwalls, and Brad, I was not in that meeting during that part. I was called in after you guys had met.
Okay. And you had acted in the days prior to February 19 as a facilitator between the prosecutors you had just named and then Mr. Dukes in an effort to get them to meet.
Correct.
All right. And the purpose of that meeting was to attempt to get information that you believed Mr. Dukes may have about the disappearance or unlawful killing of Tara Grinstead, correct?
Correct.
All right. And at that meeting, you facilitated it, people came, but when the prosecutors and Mr. Dukes and his counsel met, you stepped out of the room.
Correct. I was not in there during any of that discussion.
You didn't hear anything that was said one way or another.
No, sir.
All right. After about 30 minutes, though, you came back in that room, correct?
Yes.
And the prosecutors left that room,
I recall, yes.
okay? And then Mr. Dukes began to give you information concerning the disappearance of Ms. Grinstead, what had happened to her, that sort of information.
Yes, he gave a brief description about Ryan Duke being involved with the murder. He was shown a photograph of the orchard, which we believed, based on earlier testimony that we had gotten from a previous witness, of where we believed that where the body was destroyed, which he acknowledged on that photograph, basically saying that they were, her final remains. He mentioned that he was a former student of hers, and at that particular time, that was about it that we discussed during that meeting. The purpose of that was not to do a formal, as far as like next steps, that was
Sure.
we set up the formal interview where we had more resources in place and other things for that Tuesday.
That's correct. But you would agree something happened during that 30-minute meeting you weren't present for, but something happened in that 30-minute meeting to trigger Mr. Dukes to then tell you what had happened and set up a meeting 2 days later for a multi-hour interview, correct?
You're asking me to speculate that I know. I can't speculate as to what was said during the meeting, nor did I ask what was said in the meeting either. So I would hate to speculate. I mean, obviously, something was discussed. Y'all were in there for 30 minutes, but I can't say what was discussed.
Sure, can't say what was discussed, but you would agree that after whatever discussion there was, Mr. Dukes then gave the information that was being sought in the meeting that you had set up as a facilitator between Mr. Duke and the various district attorneys for Irvine County and then the Court Judicial Circuit.
Once again, I can't speculate as to that, but I will say that based after our conversation on the Friday when the meeting was set up, you did indicate to me that Bo did want to come in and talk about his involvement in the case. So that's where we led to the facilitating of that next meeting. So.
And I'm not, again, asking you to speculate,
Yes,
but it was after this 30-minute meeting with prosecutors that he then gave that initial statement and agreed to come in and give a full-length interview that was ultimately videotaped on 2/21/2017.
The way you said it, yes, that's exactly.
Okay, very good. Thanks, sir.
Anything further from Ms. Reynolds?
Just one other thing. On February 21st, after speaking with Mr. Dukes, was he under arrest at that time?
On the 21st?
Yes.
No, he was not under arrest on the 21st.
Thank you.
Hey, Your Honor, just a brief follow-up. Back on the 19th of February, after the meeting you weren't a part of, after he gives a statement, Mr. Dukes walked out of the GBI Regional Field Office, not under arrest.
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Jesse.
All right, you step down.
Thanks, sir.
Anything further?
Not for me to share. Does we have any more business on that?
Okay.
Sit with Logan Collins and staff. Raise your hand for me, please.
Yes,
Do you
ma'am.
swear or affirm the testimony of this court will be true, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Okay. Let me get you to state your name for the record.
Yes, my name's Logan Holland.
And how are you currently employed?
I'm a special agent.
Could you just have him spell that just for the court?
Oh, yes,
Oh, sure.
sorry.
Yeah, it's Logan Holland, Logan, and last name's Holland.
How are you currently employed?
I'm a special agent with the GBI at the Region 13 Field Office,
And the GBI, what is that?
the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
How long have you worked for the GBI?
It'll be 5 years this summer.
Are you a post-certified law enforcement officer?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been post-certified?
Since December of 2009.
Prior to working with the GBI, did you have any other jobs in law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were those?
I worked for the House County Sheriff's Office. I was a detention officer for a couple of years and then I was a patrol deputy for approximately 4 after that.
Have you ever had an occasion to come in contact with the defendant in this case, Bo Dukes?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me about that?
Sure. It was on, let me check my notes, the 22nd of February, I believe. Yes.
Okay. What year?
2017. I was requested, I believe it was by my ASAC, or my supervisor, Bill Baudry, I believe it was Bill Baudry, to go and pick up Bo Dukes at the GBI office in Perry. I think Bo had reached out to law enforcement and asked me to drive him to Ben Hill County, to a wooded area. So I picked him up at about 2:20, I think, p.m.
Had you personally been involved in any prior interviews of this defendant, Mr. Dukes?
No, ma'am.
And you said you picked him up. Where was it again that you picked him up?
At our office in Perry.
Was anyone else with him when you picked him up?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
And did he ride with you to another location?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you now know the name of that location or the address of that location?
Well, it was off Highway 129. I can't remember the specific address, but it was a pecan orchard in a wooded area off Highway 129,
And what county would that be in?
Ben Hill County.
From the time that you picked him up until you got to the pecan orchard, were you recording that?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you continue to record once you were at the pecan orchard?
Well, he ended up getting out of my vehicle, which is about the time that I turned it off, but we were recording as we pulled up into the orchard.
And now, did you advise the defendant of any of his rights prior to recording that conversation with him?
No, ma'am, I did not advise him of his rights. I reminded him of his rights. I knew that he'd been previously interviewed by law enforcement with his attorney present, and he met me there at the office, and I just reminded him of those rights and asked if I could ask him some questions as we drove to Ben Hill County.
Now, when you say you reminded him of his rights, did you go through those rights, or how did you do that?
I basically just said, he got in the vehicle and said, hey, we've got, a couple-hour drive till we get to Ben Hill County. I just wanted to remind you of your rights. You remember those? And he said that he did. I said, do you mind if I ask you some questions as we drive down there? And he said that was fine.
At any point, did the defendant seem confused about what you meant by his rights?
No, ma'am.
At any point, did he ask you any questions about that?
No, ma'am.
Did, in fact, he agree to speak with you as you were making that drive to Ben Hill County?
Yes, ma'am.
And about how long was that drive?
It was a total of about 2 hours. It probably took us an hour and 15 minutes or so to get there. We actually had to pull over in a parking lot off of 129 just north of where we were going, and we sat in the car for another, probably 30, 45 minutes before driving up there.
At any point, did you or anyone in your presence offer the defendant any hope of benefit if he agreed to speak with you that day?
No, ma'am.
At any point, did you or anyone in your presence threaten the defendant or intimidate him in any way to have him speak with you?
No, ma'am.
And at any point during that conversation, did he indicate that he wished to have his attorney present prior to speaking with you?
No, ma'am.
At any point, did he indicate that he did, in fact, not wish to speak with you or wanted to terminate that conversation?
No, not at all. No, ma'am.
After, I know you said you turned the recorder off at some point when you were at the orchard. Did you take him back to his vehicle that day?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And then was the recorder on when you were taking him back to the vehicle?
No, ma'am, it wasn't.
Do you recall if you had any conversation or you were questioning him at that point?
We talked, but I can't remember anything specific about the case because we pretty much talked about everything on the way down there and waiting in the parking lot.
And when you got to the GBI office that day, what happened to the defendant?
Oh, he got in his vehicle and he left.
At any point during that particular encounter, was the defendant under arrest?
No, ma'am.
At any point was he placed in handcuffs?
No, ma'am.
At any point was he told he was not free to go?
No, ma'am.
Just a moment, Judge. No further questions.
Yeah, I'm just briefly. Agent, when you met with Bo Dukes on February 22nd, 2017, to take him down to Ben Hill County, you knew you were going to have a pretty long drive ahead of you.
That's right. Yes, sir.
About 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Right. Yes, sir.
And at that time, you knew you were going to be asking him questions about this case.
That's correct.
You knew you'd be asking questions about a criminal investigation.
That's correct.
You knew you would be asking him questions which, if answered, could potentially incriminate him.
That's correct.
Right. Did you leave from the GBI office to meet him? Did he meet you at the GBI office? Where'd y'all meet up?
Yeah, we met at the GBI office in Perry.
Okay, and that's the Region 13 field office?
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay. Y'all have those Miranda forms like Jason was talking about being signed on the 21st there at that office?
Right, we do.
Okay. Any reason you couldn't have gotten one, put it in the car with you, and just had Mr. Duke sign it?
Well, I spoke with Agent Shadell before I picked him up, and we had a discussion, and he explained that in his previous interview with Bo and yourself the day before that he talked about that we may need to speak with him further and that those rights may carry over into further conversations and that there wasn't an issue with that. So we had a brief conversation about that beforehand, just on the telephone, and so that's why I just clarified and reminded him of his rights when he got in the car with me.
And when you say on the telephone, you're talking about Agent Shadell?
Right, yes, sir.
Were you present on the 21st when the statement was given?
No, sir, I was not.
Okay. Were you present on the 19th when Mr. Duke sat down at the GBI field office to talk with some prosecutors before agreeing to tell what happened?
No, sir, I was not present.
Right. Have you ever asked anyone what was said during that closed door meeting?
No, I don't, no, not specifically, no.
Well, did you ask things generally? You said not specific.
No, I never asked about the content of those conversations, no, sir.
Very good. Do you have a Miranda card you keep with you?
I do, yes, sir.
Did you read the rights you discussed with Mr. Dukes on the 22nd of February 2017 off that card, or just kind of wing it from memory?
No, sir.
Not off the card, you just cited it?
No, I just, well, he got in the vehicle and I said, hey, I know you've been here, read your rights. And I said, do you remember those rights? He said, yes. And I said, do you mind if I ask you some questions as we drive down? He said, no, it's fine.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Understanding, as I think I understand your testimony to be that you knew you might ask questions that were incriminating, but let me ask you this. The purpose of taking him to this area known as the pecan orchard, what was the purpose of that?
It was to, as I understand it, assist in locating the body of Tara Grinstead.
Okay. And at that point, do you have any knowledge, or did you have any personal knowledge prior to speaking with Bo Dukes as to what his involvement was in the murder of Tara Grinstead?
I can't recall at what specific time I learned of Bo's involvement. We were all doing interviews around that time, at some point that I did, and it could have been before that I knew that he had interviewed with Jason Shadell, but I can't say for certain. I mean, I knew that there was some involvement.
So let me ask this a little differently. During that ride down to the pecan orchard, the purpose of speaking with Bo Dukes, was that to have him incriminate himself, or was the purpose of that to try and locate the remains of Tara Grinstead?
Oh, I mean, the purpose was to help find Tara Grinstead.
I don't have any further questions, Judge.
Bob?
I do, just briefly. Your testimony is that Mr. Dukes was assisting you, trying to help you find the remains of Miss Grinstead.
Right. At some point, he reached out. I wasn't sure if it was Bo himself or if you did to law enforcement about helping assist locate Tara's body. And so I was asked to go pick him up and drive him down there.
And just so we're clear on the timeline, you know that there's a meeting, 2/19/2017, at the GBI office between Mr. Dukes, his lawyer, counsel for the state.
Yes.
Correct? They give some information about what happened to Miss Grinstead, and he walks out of the GBI office that day, not under arrest.
Right. I knew it was about, Miss Grinstead's case, as far as exactly what was discussed on the 19th, I know he came and he left.
Okay. You ever reviewed Agent Shadell's case file?
I've reviewed probably portions of it, but, to say I've reviewed the whole file.
Big case file.
It's very big.
1,900 exhibits or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So,
But then fixing timeline again, Mr. Dukes is back on the 21st, gives you a statement.
no, he did not. It was,
Not you, but he gives the GBI a statement.
right.
Okay. He walks it out of that meeting again, not under arrest,
Right. Yes, correct.
meets up with you next day, and as you described, tries to assist you in locating where Mrs. Grinstead's remains may be.
Right. Well, what so much help assisted me, we had several agents that were down looking for her. I was doing other interviews when I was asked to go pick him up.
All right, fair enough. And then you brought him back to Perry, and he left,
Right. Yes, sir.
walked out not under arrest?
Right. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
No further questions on this witness.
All right, you step down.
All right, thank you.
Anything further?
No, sir. Judge, may we approach?
Yeah. Well, let's just go ahead and get the jury in and make our opening statement. You got that witness here? How long is that witness? Okay. What's that mean?
I guess he's asking if we can go ahead and rule on the 26th statement, but not rule on the 17th statement. You want to defer to next time?
You talking about the June the 16th interview? Well, he was not under arrest in the court. I mean, I would admit that statement, June 16th statement. What you're talking about is from February 19th on, I guess. Yeah, okay. So June 16th. That'd be fine. Maybe have him here at 8:30 or something. Okay. You good with it?
I think so. So I'm not sure why this might be not working, but,
All right. Let's have it, Drew.
but the court is hearing, but they need to hear.
What about our microphone?
They all seem to be working. Are you hearing what you need to hear? Are you hearing what you need to hear still? Check, check. It is really low.
Yeah, mine's working, Dan.
Sorry.
I said mine should be working too. Isn't it? Yeah. All right. Members of the jury, we've had some technical issues. Someone up here is working behind me about the microphones and all. Don't worry about that. But we're now ready for counsel to make their opening statement. The state has the right to make an opening statement first and then the defense. Do you wish to make an opening statement?
Mr. Ruthie's actually going to make the opening statement, but if I may, Judge, prior to that, we would move to invoke the rule of sequestration. We have a couple of folks who we believe should be exempt from the rule of sequestration who were served subpoenas but will not be called as witnesses. Just wanted to address that with the court before we start openings.
Your Honor, we would ask that the rule of sequestration be invoked.
All right. All those that are testifying in the case will need to wait outside the courtroom until you're called as a witness.
Judge, specifically, if I may address, sorry, Ms. Connie and Billy Grinstead were served subpoenas in this case. The state does not intend to call them to the stand, and under the victim's Bill of Rights, they have the right to remain in here, and they cannot be sequestered just simply at the idea that they might be called. At this point, the state does not intend to call them. That would also apply to Anita Gaddis. She is not in the courtroom today, but again, we anticipate she'll be here throughout the course of the trial. She is the sister of Ms. Tara Grinstead and would also be covered under the victim's Bill of Rights.
Your Honor, we have absolutely no objection to those individuals being in this.
All right. They can remain in the courtroom.
And if I may, one more, Judge, I apologize. Special Agent Charge J.T. Ricketson, I've seen he's in the courtroom today. He was on the state's witness list. We have no intention of calling him either as it relates to this particular case. Just wanted the court to be aware of that and see if he can be released from that role as well.
That would be fine, Your Honor. I just ask under the circumstances he be released from his subpoena as well.
All right. He's released.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. You may proceed.
It takes 1,200 degrees to burn human bones. 1,200 degrees to burn human bones. And pecan wood burns really hot. 1,200 degrees. Pecan wood. Burns really hot. The words of this defendant, the words of Bo Dukes, 1,200 degrees to burn fellow recruit in basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, John McCullough. Before a conwood torched those human bones, those bones belong to a living, breathing human being with flesh, a beautiful face, a winning personality. The personality, the face of Tara Grinstead. Tara was a daughter, a sister, a teacher, a cheerleading coach, pageant queen. She was the one who invested her lives in others. Late that Saturday night and early Sunday morning of October the 22nd and 23rd, 2005, Ryan Duke, the then roommate of this defendant, Bo Dukes, traveled to her small residence, 300 West Park Street in Osceola, Georgia, in Irwin County, and killed her. He left a glove outside as he moved her body with Bo's truck. And Ryan takes it and leaves it in the tall grass in the pecan orchard that Bo and his family owned. In fact, leaves her naked body in the tall grass in the pecan orchard known as Hudson Farms. Fitzgerald Farms. Ryan, his roommate, tells him what's happened. And then for the next few days, Bo and Ryan go out to the pecan orchard where they move the body. They move the body in the pecan orchard and they burn her body down to human bones and ashes. And that's where they leave her, alone, reduced to ashes. In a pecan orchard in Fitchburg. A few weeks later, this defendant, Bo Dukes, and his buddy Ryan Dukes have a bonfire out in the same orchard. Not in the same location where they burned her body to bones and ashes. They have a bonfire with some friends out. One of those friends is a young man by the name of Garland Lott. And Garland is out there and he sees Bo and Ryan there together. And they say that they killed her, and they burned her body. Garland, being one of their friends in their peer group, was very disturbed by what they said. And Garland reported it to local law enforcement. Local law enforcement went to that location where they actually had the bonfire for the party, not to the location where her body was actually burned. Law enforcement looked. They didn't locate anything there at that location because it was at a separate location, some great distance away where she was actually burned. Nothing came from what Mr. Lott had told law enforcement when they went to look. They didn't find anything. But we are not here to try Bo for Tara's murder. Now, you'll hear evidence about the murder. But that's not what we're here to do. You'll hear that Ryan left his glove outside of Tara's residence at 300 West Park out in Osceola that has his DNA and Tara's DNA on that glove. You're going to see blood that was left on Tara's comforter. But this case is not about her murder. This case is about lies. this defendant's lies. This case is about his secrets, his denial. That's what this case is about. Those charges are here in Wilcox County. They're for 2 counts of false statement, hindering the apprehension of a felon, and concealing the death of another. This is the indictment that's been returned by the Wilcox County Grand Jury that he did on January the 16th of 2016, knowingly, willfully falsify, conceal, or cover up that Ryan Alexander II had told him, confessed him about the death of Tara Grinstead, a material fact in the investigation of her disappearance. A matter within the GBI state agency by his denial to Agent Jason Shadell at the GBI that he did not discuss Tara Grinstead with John McCullough. Count 2, same day, June 16th of 2016, that he did falsify, conceal, and cover up that he assisted Ryan Alexander Duke destroying and disposing of the body of Tara Grinstead, a matter within the jurisdiction of the GBI by his denial to Agent Shadell, the GBI, that he did not discuss burning the body of Tara Grinstead with John McCullough. Count 3, that he did on that same day, June 16, 2016, and lawfully conceal a confession of murder made to him by Ryan Alexander Duke, evidence of a crime of malice murder, that he knew or had reasonable grounds to believe it was committed by Ryan Alexander Duke, and he intended to hinder the apprehension of Ryan Alexander Duke. And count 4, that he did conceal the death of Tara Grinstead, which hindered the discovery whether or not she was unlawfully killed by Mr. Duke, by his denial to Agent Shadell during the investigation by the GBI of the interview regarding the death and destruction of the body of Tara Grinstead. Those are the 4 counts that you were selected to decide and to reach the truth about. That's what this case is about for those 4 charges. The state has the burden of proof, and we intend to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant is guilty of all 4 of those charges. In November of 2006, so remember Mr. Lott gave a statement to law enforcement pretty close in time to the event when she disappeared in October of 2005. In November of 2006, this defendant, Bo Dukes, goes to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where he is in basic training as a recruit. During their Christmas break, they call it, I think, Christmas Exodus, they came home to Rochelle, Georgia, where John McCullough, I believe, rode a bus over here and stayed with Bo and his mother, Miss Hudson. And John McCullough, I expect, will tell you that while he was driving and perhaps they had something to drink that night, some alcoholic beverages, that this defendant, Bo Dukes, begins telling him that 1,200 degrees is what it takes to burn human bones. Mr. McCullough, as they're riding around in this area from Rochelle to Fitzgerald and into Osceola, Mr. McCullough sees a billboard about Tara Grinstead and that she's missing. And he notices that she's a very beautiful lady, and of course he inquires of Bo Dukes about the beautiful missing lady that is on the billboard. And he doesn't say anything at that time, but Mr. McCullough will tell you later that night that he says, "Hey, you're my battle buddy, right?" And he'll tell Mr. McCullough, "I know who did it." He tells Mr. McCullough, "My buddy showed up," and excuse my language, but his buddy says, "I fucked up. I did something bad and I need your trouble." Mr. Bo Dukes tells John McCullough that they then went and burned the body where nobody could ever find it because pecan wood burns really hot. Remember, 1,200 degrees to burn her human bones. John McCullough later calls Jason Shadell with the GBI. Mr. McCullough, in fact, does a telephone interview with Jason Shadell on June 14th of 2016. When Mr. Shadell talks with him 2 days later, Agent Shadell interviews this defendant, Bo Dukes, right here in Wilcox County at the Rochelle Police Department. That's what this case is about, is this interview at the Rochelle Police Department. With that interview, this defendant is confronted by Agent Shadell about what John McCullough had told him. And this defendant says, nope, denies it all. June 16th of 2016. Don't know anything about Tara Grinstead, don't know anything about her body, I don't know anything about it. Would you have told John McCullough that? No, I don't know why he would say something like that. Well, after those lies to Agent Shadell, his denial, nearly 7 more months have passed. And this defendant, Bo's girlfriend, is Brooke Sheridan. And Brooke and Bo have been living together in Perry, Houston County. In January 2017, they have a disagreement, and they kind of separate for that time. It's then in that late January to early February that Brooke assembles her closest friends and assembles her mother, Kim Sheridan. And what she does is she tells the secret, Bo's secret, that he had been keeping for Ryan. And Brooke tells Bo's secret that he had been keeping for Ryan to her mother and her closest friends. She had found out, Brooke had found out just a few weeks ago that Bo had told her what Ryan had done and what he had done to the body of Tara Grinstead. Kim Sheridan, being the mother of Brooke, calls District Attorney Tim Baum, another circuit. And District Attorney Baum refers her to the GBI. Sheridan is interviewed by GBI, that is Ms. Kim Sheridan, and she tells them what her daughter told her. Brooke Sheridan is interviewed a couple of days later. Brooke Sheridan tells the GBI that Bo had confessed to her that Ryan had killed Tara Grinstead and that Bo had helped burn and destroy and dispose of her body. Kim Sheridan, knowing that her daughter is involved in a relationship with this man, later confronts Bo herself. And she asks Bo, what happened? And Bo tells her, Ryan killed her, and I helped him dispose of the body. I helped burn, destroy, and dispose of her body. You will hear that in the pecan orchard, Fitzgerald Farms, Hudson Farms, they're off Dublin Mill Highway in Fitzgerald, that GBI agents go out to that location. They are looking in a couple of different locations, and finally they find a location out there on Fitzgerald Farms where they begin to dig for the bones that burned at over 1,200 degrees of Tara Grinstead. In fact, the GBI began using a forensic anthropologist. An anthropologist, one who normally would go out and dig in burial grounds or old bones. But Dr. Alice Gooding comes from Kennesaw State University, where she helped them go out and to search in the pecan orchard near Pine Picket for the bones of Tara Grinstead. Well, it is there where they dig, and you'll see the plots, F and G and J and I, how they identify them, where they would scrape soil and they will find bone, a little bone here, a little bone there, a vertebra, a tooth, scalp, your skull, pieces, burned, measured, head over shoulder. It's there that Dr. Goody will identify Tara's final resting place. There at a pecan orchard after more than 11 years of being missing. She's found. But she's found in bones and ashes. This case is about Beau's secret. Beau's secret that he kept for Ryan. It's about his secret. That he helped Ryan destroy, burn, and dispose of her body. The secret that he kept here in Wilcox County when he spoke with Agent Shadell on June 16 of 2016. This case is about Beau's lies. Lies that lasted from 2005 to 2016. It's about Beau's cover-up. It's about Beau's concealment that his best friend Ryan had killed Tara Grinstead, and then they both burned the body. It is about Beau's pecan wood and his family's pecan orchard that burns hot at 1200 degrees, where it burned the bones, burns the flesh, and burned the bones to ashes. After you've heard the evidence in this case, the state will have proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant is guilty on all four counts.
Mr. Fox.
Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, it is nearly 5:30, and I know you have had an incredibly long day. I saw you all downstairs, down in the courthouse, before 8:30. You've been extremely patient throughout the jury selection process, which took most of the morning. You were incredibly patient in this actual selection process where you were chosen to be on this jury. And now, your job begins. As the judge instructed, gave you kind of a roadmap, if you will, for those preliminary instructions. Kind of an orientation. I'll tell you the thing I've never liked about orientation. This orientation that you take to school, perhaps doing a job, maybe somewhere you volunteer, is that invariably orientation seems to make the task that is ahead of you much more difficult than it is. But that's not the case. I want to keep it simple. Now, as the judge said, opening statements are not evidence. The lawyers are advocates. You are here to determine what happened during an interview that lasted less than 15 minutes on June 16, 2016. That is it. We need to remain focused on that. This case deals with and exclusively with those statements, the statements allegedly made during this recorded interview. It's 14 minutes long. It was recorded. See, unlike the call that John McCullough made to the GBI in 2016, 10 years after he says these statements were made, it's not recorded. The conversation between the GBI and Mr. Dukes is recorded. You have to hear asked, the specific questions asked, and the specific answers that are given. Then after hearing the evidence, waited so people will determine what happened on that day, June 16, 2016. But the issue before you is not that Mr. Dukes is charged with burning Ms. Grinstead's body to bones and ashes. He is charged in Ben Hill County in a 3-count indictment that alleges the concealment of Ms. Grinstead's death by burning her body. He is charged with tampering with evidence by burning her body, and he is charged with hindering Ryan Duke's apprehension by burning her body. Those specific allegations, the allegations related to bone and the ash that the state talked about, are in a different county for a different jury on a different trial. And we must not lose sight of it. It bears repeating because it is that important. This case deals with statements made during the interview on June 16, 2016. The issue of whether he burned her body, concealed her death, tampered with evidence, and hindered Ryan Duke's apprehension. Those specific acts are charged in Ben Hill, and again, that is a job for a different jury to weigh on a different day in a different trial. The state and I don't agree on a lot. I'll tell you one thing we do agree is that this case is not about some allegation that Bo Dukes murdered Tara Grinstead. This is not Ryan Duke's murder trial. That begins April 1, a couple of weeks from now. Just as the judge told you, Mr. Dukes sits at that table presumed to be innocent. That is the law. That's where all of this begins. And he will remain innocent day after day until you are given the full opportunity to evaluate the evidence produced by the state. You'll have a chance to wait. You'll be able to view the witnesses. You'll see John McCullough and hear from him. Not what the lawyers think he said, but what he says. And through that process, you will be able to determine whether or not the state has carried its burden beyond a reasonable doubt, because it is only if the state proves the allegations set forth in the indictment that beyond a reasonable doubt, Mr. Dukes will be found guilty. And it is the exact charges in the indictment. All right? When the state charges a crime, and a very serious crime, you can't simply convict someone if they prove a particular crime, if they prove a separate crime. That indictment that Mr. read to you, just as the judge told you, that indictment is the charging instrument. It frames what the state says Mr. Dukes did to violate the law. And that sets out exactly what they must prove. But you have to keep in mind, if you're dealing only with, as Mr. Grinstead, lies allegedly given June 16, 2016. That's the only issue framed by the indictment, the only one that you are to consider. Based on what the state says, it sounds like you have a lot of information coming your way. It sounds like you'll hear not only from civilian witnesses, law enforcement witnesses, forensic anthropologists, doctors, people, things of that nature. It's essential that you remain vigilant throughout this trial in your observations. You must listen carefully to the evidence introduced. Some of it may be very technical, at times it may be hard to hear, but it's essential that you remain diligent listening to the evidence that is presented to you, but also paying attention to where there are gaps in evidence that is not presented to you. Because ultimately, at the end of this case, your job is going to be to take that evidence, to sift that evidence, to weigh that evidence, and ask yourself, is this proof beyond a reasonable doubt committed the exact charges framed in that indictment. Is the evidence I've heard clear? Is it unclear? Is it credible, or does it lack credibility? All right, is this proof beyond a reasonable doubt? These are the things you must keep in your mind. This is your duty. This is the oath you swore to take. The oath you swore fulfilled says that if the state does not fulfill its burden, does not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, it is your duty to acquit. The evidence that is presented concerning this meeting is less than 15 minutes meeting, June 16, 2016. When you listen to the questions that are asked by the GBI, listen to the answers that are provided, you have a chance to weigh John McCullough's credibility, and listen to him. That evidence is not going to show you that Mr. Dukes made false statements about some alleged conversation with John McCullough. The evidence is not going to show you that he concealed information with the intent of hindering the apprehension of Ryan Duke. And it is not going to show you that his statements concealed the unlawful death of Tara Grinstead. I'd imagine weeks ago when you opened your mouth, there's notes for jury. You probably got a little nervous when you saw it, a little frustrated because maybe this word is going to be disruptive. But you heeded the call, and you came today. You're downstairs early, came through, you didn't know what to expect. You didn't know what would be expected of you. You're put into a room full of strangers, or not strangers. Seems like a lot of y'all know each other based on your diary. But you're put into a room with your community. And you're asked questions by lawyers. Sometimes very personal questions. It's not the most valuable thing in the world. But you heeded the call. I'm sure all of you were here earlier when the roll was originally read. There are a lot of names for which there was no response. There were a lot of empty chairs. Perhaps the reason for that is when the call goes out, not everyone heeds it, not everyone has the courage to, but you did. You had the courage to heed the call. You're now the jury in this case. Take an oath, and to do your job is going to take courage. It is going to take courage to weigh the evidence. It's going to take courage to ultimately deliberate. These are tragic facts. There's no other way to deal with this right. It is going to take courage for you to fulfill your duty in this case. And you've shown me courage rushing. Now, I'm going to do everything I can in my power to be a good steward of your time. I'm going to be asking a bunch of questions that don't need to be asked. We're not going to try to drag this out. I'm going to be a good steward of your time. I'm going to do everything I can to defend my client. And I ask two things in exchange from you for that. First is that you keep an open mind. That no matter what you've read, no matter what you've heard, only pay attention to the evidence that is presented to you. You will reserve all judgment until you have heard all of the evidence. The judge instructs you on what the law is. Second, I ask that when you are in this box, that you try to keep your mind free and clear of all of the other obligations that you have that you're not able to fulfill because you are serving as a juror. Keep your mind clear of worries about your family, your jobs. And when you do that, pay attention to the evidence in this case. All of it. Hear what the law is, you ultimately apply that law, the facts as so presented. We're going to ask you to return the verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
All right, you can call your first witness.
State will call Kim Sheridan to the stand.
Okay.
Would you raise your hand? Do you swear or affirm testimony before this jury the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have a seat for me, please.
If you will, make sure you,
Scoot up
hold
to the
on.
microphone.
Yeah. Let's get it right up close.
There you go.
Right about there.
Yeah.
Can you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
I'm Kimmelyn Sheridan,
Okay. And Ms. Sheridan, what town do you live in?
Perry,
How long have you lived in Perry?
37 years.
Do you know the defendant in this case, Bo Dukes?
I do.
And how long have you known the defendant?
3 years.
How did you first meet the defendant in this case?
He's dating my daughter,
What is your daughter's name?
Ashley Brooks Sheridan.
And I know you said you've known him for about 3 years. Did you meet him after they started dating, or did she know him before then?
They had started dating, and I'm not quite sure how long, but she brought him to a family reunion. That's how we met him.
At the time, I guess let me ask you a different question. How old is your daughter now?
You're asking for math. She's 34.
Okay. And at the time, was she living at home with you or somewhere else?
She was not living at home, I don't believe. She was renting a house in Perry.
What does your daughter do for a living?
She's a pharmacist.
Now, you said when you first met Bo, they were already dating to some
Yes,
extent?
yes.
Did there come an occasion where, or a time when Brooke actually moved in with the defendant in this case?
Yes.
Do you know about how long it was they were living together prior to all of this coming to fruition in February 2017?
I'm not sure. I really don't know the time frame.
In January and February 2017, was Brooke living with the defendant?
Yes.
And do you know where they were living?
Please forgive me if I don't remember exactly where they were living.
I don't need the address.
They were, I believe they were living at Bo's mom's place, farm,
Do you know his mother's name?
Dixie.
Now, did there come an occasion when Brooke called you up and wanted to have a meeting with some of the family members?
She did.
Do you recall who all was at this meeting?
My husband and myself, my daughter and her boyfriend, husband at the time, a friend of Brooke's, and I believe her boyfriend, and Brooke.
So to be clear, when you say your daughter and her now husband, do you have more than one daughter?
I do.
When Brooke got there, what was her state?
She was very frazzled, and very angry.
Now, I don't want to go into the specifics of what Brooke told you on that occasion, but did you come to learn information that you felt needed to report it to law enforcement?
Yes, I did.
And that particular information, did it relate to what you knew to be an ongoing case?
Yes.
And what was that ongoing case?
The case of Tara Grinstead.
When Brooke told you this information, was there ever any doubt in your mind that you would report it to law enforcement?
No.
And how quickly was it that you did report it?
That evening, we started reaching out
Who did you reach out to?
to Tim Vaughn.
Who was Tim Vaughn?
He's a district attorney here in the southern area of Georgia. He's also a lifelong friend of mine.
Did you know at that time if Tim Vaughn had any connection to the disappearance, the case involving the disappearance of Ms. Grinstead?
No, I had no idea. I didn't know that there was a task force or anything. I just was looking for someone to guide me, to point me in the right direction, and I thought that Tim would be a good place to start.
Did you have concerns about reporting this to law enforcement?
The only concerns that I actually had were that we get it to the right person, and that it concerned me that Brooke had known for a couple of weeks, and I needed to make sure that my daughter didn't need legal counsel as well.
Do you recall what month that was in 2017 where that conversation took place with Brooke?
That was in February, I believe.
After after speaking with Mr. Vaughn, did you ever come into contact with anyone who worked for GBI?
Jason contacted me.
Based on that, do you know if Jason had a meeting with your daughter, Brooke Sharon?
He did.
Were you present for that meeting?
I was not.
Have you ever heard the recording of that meeting?
I have not.
Do you have any personal knowledge as to what your daughter told the GBI that day?
I do not.
Now, at the time that your daughter met with the GBI, what was the status of her relationship with the defendant in this case, Bo Dukes?
They were broken up.
Subsequent to that, do you know if your daughter ever reinitiated or started a relationship back with the defendant?
She did.
And as of today's date, what is the status of their relationship?
They are still in a relationship.
Now, before we go into your specific conversations with Bo, let me kind of back up and talk to you. You said Brooke is how old again? I'm sorry.
34-ish.
Is she the oldest daughter? or
She's the baby. She's the baby.
You talked to us earlier about her job. Where did she get her degree in pharmacy?
South University in Savannah.
After you learned about the situation involving Bo and Ms. Grinstead, was Bo ever allowed back in your home?
Not for a while.
Why not?
It was devastating. Her father and I didn't approve of her continued alliance with Bo. It broke us. That situation just broke the family and had caused so much just emotional stress and turmoil. And there were so many, we didn't want him back. We wanted to get out of the limelight. It wasn't our battle to fight, and we wanted to step away as much as we could. And we just didn't think that Bo was the kind of man that we wanted around our family.
But did you allow him back in your home?
We did,
Why?
because I love my daughter. And if we didn't allow Bo back in, then she wouldn't come around. And I wasn't going to have that. I love my kids.
After a time period when you had allowed Bo back in your home, did you ever speak with him directly about the situation involving Tara Grinstead?
It was a while after that. Mostly the original time had been at family gatherings, and it just wasn't the place to bring it up. We just kind of avoided the situation. But then Brooke we had moved Brooke while they were broken up into a home. She had rented a home, and I went over there and to kind of break the ice, because at this point, if I'm not mistaken, this was during the time when maybe even before he was allowed back in our home. I was going over to visit Brooke and see her, and he was there, and we had some conversations. And I asked him questions, you know.
Before I go into that, let me ask you, you said that this conversation may have taken place before he was allowed back in your home.
It may have. I'm not real good with dates.
Who was the person who finally made the decision to allow him back in your home?
It was me.
And did you have any convincing to do with the other persons in the family?
Oh, yes, especially with my husband.
And tell us about that, please.
Well, it finally got to him too, and we had to have that discussion that if we wanted to see our daughter, if we wanted to celebrate holidays, if we wanted to be around her, we had to allow Bo back in the house, because those were her stipulations, that Bo was the love of her life, and he was part of her life, and if we didn't want him in her home, she would not come into our home.
We conversation with Bo, what did you ask him?
Basically, was what Brooke told us true? Had he helped to dispose of Tara's body? And he said yes. Why didn't he tell people? And he said that he had told people over the years, but not law enforcement. And I asked him specifically why Ryan killed her.
What did he say?
He said he never asked him why.
Did you ever ask Bo if he was responsible for the murder of Tara Grinstead?
Maybe not in so many words. Kind of like, are you sure that's all there is to it? It was just so hard for me to fathom the whole thing anyway. It was like living in a surreal bubble, but he assured me otherwise.
And you said earlier that you essentially asked him if the things that Brooke had told you were true.
Mm-hmm.
What was his response to that?
It was true.
And based on the conversation that you were having, that you had with Brooke, and then what you had with the defendant, what was your understanding of the role that he played as it related to the disappearance of Tara Grinstead?
Things that he told me were that he had helped to dispose of the body, that they had burned it in the pecan orchard, that he had been there that night when it all happened, or, when they burned the body, and that it had been his truck that was used to transport the body.
Just a moment, Judge. And I think you mentioned this, but I'm going to make sure that I ask you specifically. Did the defendant indicate whether or not he ever asked Ryan Duke why he had murdered Tara Grinstead?
He said he did not ask him.
No further questions.
Response.
Sharon, I'm sorry to find yourself in this position. If I ask you questions you don't understand, you can't hear me, just ask me to rephrase.
Will do.
This was 2017 when Brooke came to you, correct? About how long had Brooke and Bo been in a relationship prior to that?
I would say a year, maybe a little over, yeah.
Did, after you two talked, had interactions during that time, you wanted to get to know your daughter's boyfriend, fair enough?
Correct?
Thank you. Did he ever talk with you about his time in the military?
No, he did not.
Have you ever heard him mention or say the name John McCullough?
I've heard the name.
Have you ever known Mr. Dukes to drink to excess?
Not in front of me, no.
What about not?
Meaning that I've heard that he does,
Yes, sir.
but he's never been drunk in my presence.
Anything further?
To be clear, anything that you have heard about the defendant drinking in excess, who would you have heard that from?
From Brooke and my other daughter, actually.
Now, defense counsel asked if you ever heard the name John McCullough. Let me be more clear. Prior to all of this coming out in February of 2017, had you ever heard the name John McCullough?
No.
Since February of 2017, have you had to become fairly intimately familiar with all the players in this case?
Can I say that I have done my best to stay away from becoming familiar with all the players in the case?
Have you been successful in that?
No, because the players like to follow us around.
No further questions.
Anything? All right. You may step down.
Could you spell your first name for me? Kimallyn. Thank you.
All right, members of the jury, we're going to recess now for the evening with these instructions, and that is you're not to discuss the case with anyone. Don't allow anyone to discuss it in your presence or in your hearing, and don't discuss it among yourselves until I give you instructions to do so. Now, with those instructions, you're free to go. Be back here in the morning at 9 o'clock when we resume the trial at that time. You may leave. Mr. Rigby, I need y'all's request to charge.
Since I did not make copies, I'll have them ready first thing in the morning.
Do you have yours?